This is not a show and might not even be a connection. Here's Judah and guest.
And my guest is once again Joshua Blackburn. Joshua, how are things going for you today?
It's just a beautiful, warm summer hump day here in Northeast Tennessee.
It was rainy here. It was poetically melancholy today.
Ooh.
Rainy. It was rainy and gray.
Overcast and gray. Yeah,
Overcast.
I like those days in the fall.
In the fall? Only in the fall?
Well, I shouldn't say only. It's just I prefer them in the fall. Maybe even the spring, where you can make yourself a cup of hot tea and read some poetry.
What's your favorite tea?
I don't know. I'm kind of boring. I do like a cup of Earl Grey. So
that's my favorite, Earl Grey or Constant Comment.
Constant Comment. No, I'll break out and get into some the more English or Irish breakfast teas that are a little just really good. They're just straight up like black teas.
I recently had some Southern sweet tea that they made with Earl Grey, like cold sweet tea made with Earl Grey. It was not bad. I did not hate that.
I may have to put in a request for that.
Well, so today is another day in 2020, and I feel there's we can almost bite the something in the air, man. There's just something. It's in social media for the most part, but I put in the comments. I didn't know what we were going to talk about. I mean, I put in the title something about prophecy, and I shared that prophecy about in November something big is the fist of God is gonna hit America.
Sure.
In November. That was the prophecy. And but I think the gist of it was to brace yourself for what's gonna happen. I mean, I had to brace myself for the spring of 2020. I feel like it's not a big stretch to think we need to brace ourselves for the fall.
What do you mean by brace yourself? I'm curious because
so God told me, and it's not audibly, but in so many ways, that I needed to move. And I just did not want to move. I was in a great place in my job. I had clients that I really enjoyed working with. One I moved close by, and I was just against it. Even though I had been for moving to North Carolina forever, I just was like, God, stop screwing with me, And I just got this sense, I got this message, not audibly, but just, in part, I got a message. Everything's going to change in the spring. And I remember even trying to envision how things might be totally different in the spring, that I wouldn't need, to go through a divorce with friends and clients and my job. I couldn't think of a way things could possibly be different. Of course, COVID hit, and it is absolutely different. So it's no big stretch of the imagination to imagine it much different in the fall, as we have a giant election coming up in November. So brace yourself to me means prepare, watch, because I don't think things are going to get better. I really don't. I'm looking at the tenor, the divide in people, people just not understanding each other, and I don't think it's going to get better. What do you think?
Well, sure. I think in the short term, no, probably not.
I'm talking about between now and November.
And well, it's funny. I had a conversation with somebody today who, when we were discussing some of these issues around the coronavirus, and this is within the context of trying to do telehealth and therapy. And this particular clinician was like, "Oh, it's not ideal. It started with it's not ideal to basically everything is awful."
Hmm.
And I'm just like, everything? I mean, like all of it? I'm not sure if I can endorse that statement. So, I'll make some jokes and make you laugh and encourage you and, share some gratitude and agree to disagree on that notion.
Yeah.
I guess here's the thing, going back to brace. Like when I think about getting in a car wreck, I guess there's competing theories about like, should you like tense up or should you go limp, right? Like, should you be open to what's there or should you be like really clenched down? And I guess I kind of hope that, if I see it coming, I'll just kind of go limp and, try to roll with it as much as possible. I guess when I hear prophecy, what I sometimes think of is, well, gosh, people will get scared and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like it's not like something outside of my control was going to happen and I was going to prepare for it. It was like I had this premonition that something was going to happen, and then I did something that made it happen. I was afraid of my neighbor, and so I, started carrying a firearm all the time, and everyone else started carrying firearms, and next thing you know,
I shot somebody.
It's OK Corral time, right? It's like Old West. Pew pew. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, everything can always get worse. Things can get better. Things can stay the same. I tend to think that things will just be different, regardless of whoever's president.
Well, I don't even think it has to do with whoever gets elected. I think there's going to be turmoil either way.
There's certainly, I think we've maybe discussed this a little bit. I mean, there's always been, I think, in America, America's always lived on a powder keg in some way, shape, or form. We've got a two-party system and have often had, for most of our history, a two-party system, right? So I mean, there's a binary divide.
Why are you just like dissing the Whigs like that, man?
Well, I've never. Yeah, why am I dissing the Whigs? There's been a two-party system, but the names have changed. I mean, like,
that's true.
The Republicans of the 1860s are now the Democrats of the 2020s. Democrats 100 years ago were more conservative. So I mean, it just change the names, change party platforms. There's always been predominantly a divide.
Yeah,
ideologically.
Yeah.
I
mean, politics. So politics creates the powder keg. But I think there's more than that. I believe that we are at a unique position in our history as a human race. As technology has put us in this weird position that we've never been in ever in the history of mankind, where we have just automatic and just instant touch between politicians, their decisions, and everybody.
Well, I might humbly disagree with some of what you just said.
I was hoping you would.
Yeah, I don't think politics creates a powder keg. I mean, politics, in my opinion, is a given. Like, there is going to have to be policymaking and decisions and actions that take place. Ideas and culture, on the other hand, that I believe is probably more the powder keg. There are deep divides within ideas and beliefs and culture, not just globally, but more specifically, I think, in America. And that, in my opinion, is what can fuel the powder keg. And in my opinion, most of the time, most political decisions are slow in the sense of like their outcome. Like, we often talk about, and a president gets up and he's like, well, I've done this for the economy. And it's like, well, isn't that not really the cumulative effect of other decisions that have been made over the last 20 years? So for you to stand up there and even claim credit is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Now,
but I guess what I'm
technology though is, I mean, if it's anything on a powder keg, it's an accelerant, right? So like, if I want to light the house up, I want to get some gasoline and throw it on it. The thing that comes to my mind, like is social media in countries like India and Pakistan, where they've had to put filters on and really monitor that stuff because people have died very quickly. When a bit of information or allegation is made against someone, next thing they've got a riot and someone's finding themselves on the wrong end of mob violence. And the same thing I think can happen here. Like we had an incident here in Bristol.
Do tell.
About, it's been a month ago, it was a month ago. We talked about this briefly, maybe off camera, a while back. There was some little old lady in a prayer group at church that said that Antifa was bussing in people for a Black Lives Matter protest here in tiny Podunk. And it went crazy. They boarded up shops. They boarded up grocery stores.
Did I tell you what happened in our little town in Westmount?
Yeah.
They had all of a sudden everybody was buzzing about there's a protest going on this intersection, and it went from protest to riots. There was all kinds of elaboration on this claim. When I went by, it was some 23-year-old holding a sign.
Yeah. So, I mean, technology, I think, is a piece that is really oftentimes it's out of our control and it's frightening. The potential consequences to what can occur when information is moving so quickly and it's not verified.
Yeah, and then we have gatekeepers on top of that. So recently
there's a flip side, people that are keeping out particular kinds of information.
And see, that can work both ways. I don't think people understand. Have you heard of the Streisand effect?
No.
A couple of years ago, probably 5 years now ago. It's weird. People were going through Google Maps, right? And they found Barbara Streisand's house. They took a picture of it. She had something going on that she didn't want people to see or something. And she went online and demanded that it be taken down. So what happened was, when only a few people had found this and posted it on some podunk little website, she went and made this declaration, which brought everybody's attention to it, and it became viral. It went from being nothing, ticked her off. She made some kind of, a declaration about it on Twitter, and it just went like wildfire. And I don't think people realize, so recently there was a Nigerian lady who she's a doctor who made declarations about hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. Anyways, that's its own beehive. But I was just posting it as much as possible to see how much. And plus, I like the lady. She's like this Christian lady who's just really confident and bold. And but Facebook kept taking it down and banning it. And so obviously it became the number one topic. If they had just left it alone and let somebody's own community sort of police them, she had some other wild claims and things that she would have probably been just discredited, what have you. But instead, the Streisand effect. She became, I think they've calculated it's gone like past 50 million views, if you aggregate all the different videos that have gotten viewed. So I feel like there is, intervention begets intervention, right? Like when people start to intervene, you press on that toothpaste, it's coming out somewhere else, right? So
force gets met with force.
The gatekeepers, I feel like, add an extra accelerant that is, we don't know how that's going to come out, right?
No, you don't.
Imagine if telephone operators were like, I'm sorry, I can't call that person right now. What if telephone operators began deciding who could talk to who and who could, send what message? You're a history buff. Has that been a factor in history where the messages, the mail, the what have you, the mode of communication was a big factor?
Ooh, I guess, and especially in the from the perspective of censorship.
I imagine there were some pigeons and some crows that were shot down with messages. That's censorship. Right?
That's a good question. That I don't. Nothing jumps into my mind. I mean, certainly that's the irony of like censorship in general, right? The more you censor something, that it tends to produce a counter response that's greater than what you were trying to stop. Like the notion of banning books is often, I think, maybe a good example of that. Like, well, this book is bad, you can't read this book, and all of a sudden, people that would have never even thought of reading Catcher in the Rye or anything else were like, oh, I don't want to read that. Taboo.
Taboo. Making things taboo.
Yeah, we're going to violate that. Especially things that are apparently arbitrary. They've got a semblance of being arbitrary.
Well, I read. Have you read any Jay? What's his name? Jay. I don't know. He sort of had a big hand in the counseling field in which they did more. It escapes me right now.
You're probably thinking of Jay Adams.
Is it Jay Adams? That doesn't ring a bell. Maybe. No. But he worked a lot with giving directives, hoping that they would, he called it double bind.
Yeah, so you're not thinking so much like biblical counseling, like Jay Haley?
Jay Haley. There we go.
Cybernetics.
Yeah. So giving these double bind directives where if you went along with the directive, then it was a good outcome. It was the outcome that the counselor hoped for. And if you went against the directive, it was an outcome, so he would say, I don't really think you can handle this. Here's the directive. And so if the person didn't, because he actually believed that the person wouldn't be able to, because people generally go against what they're told to do. They just generally do. There's something in the human nature that if you tell somebody to do something or not to do something specifically, they will do it. And if you tell them to do something, they will not do it. But he said, so in his book, he talks about how Jesus actually employed this. Now, I don't know the validity of this, but it was intriguing to me when he said, every time Jesus said, do not talk about this, it was a double bind in the sense that he really didn't want him to talk about it, but if he did spread it, it still spread the good news of Christ being there, so it still served his purposes. I don't know if Christ was as manipulative or maneuvering, but it's interesting. And it made me think,
It's an interesting take.
And that's what was just interesting about social engineering. So many things that are going on right now. We talked about close all of the public schools.
Mm-hmm.
Me and you. Oh no!
Please don't.
We
Stop.
don't want to destroy public schools.
Don't throw me in the briar patch. Anything but that.
Yeah. Just these directives that could backfire for established government in a big way.
It's definitely pushing change with lots of potential unintended consequences. But I mean, that's the hard thing, right? I think it's life. Like, life throws us things and we have to adapt, and we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a bad thing.
It's not.
I don't know.
I feel like I was thinking about this today, about the lack of control we have as our lives. Somebody used this analogy, and I like it. Or at least I like it today. That life is like a boat, and you are not driving the boat. You do have no control of where it's going, but you can control a lot of what's going on in the boat. So it matters in the sense of like, you can do things in the boat that affect your immediate.
Mm-hmm.
But in the long run, we have very little control over anything.
Yeah. You have no control over the boat. You certainly, you have some control over what you do on the boat, and we also have control over our attitude in the midst of all of that. Our choice.
We have control of ourselves. Well, even that is a little iffy.
We have control over our behavior. And I think we have some choice about the attitude that we're going to choose to take. I do this all the time with clients as far as emotion. Like we don't. Emotion and mood to some degree are outside of our immediate control, right? Like you've got to do something else to change it. It's like, well, be angry right now. Okay, now when you're done, now I want you to be happy, right? I mean, like you've got to do something else to change your mood or emotion. Same thing with thought, and same thing with a lot of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's some control over the thoughts that we create, but the thoughts that just simply jump into our minds,
right?
Well, control might be pushing it a little bit.
In any particular moment, we have no control of that moment. It's how we react to that moment, which is weird, right?
Yeah.
We have retrospective control, even if that retrospect is only a second long, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. And in fact, as you know, like those split seconds, the difference between being able to take a deep breath and not, and just reacting makes a huge difference in our lives. And I think that's the thing. Like when I see those types of prophecies and go back to like civil unrest and the divide, and I just think, I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is I've got a brief moment to decide how I'm going to behave next. And while I'm all for being prepared in some Boy Scout kind of always be prepared sort of way, and I don't know if I want to brace, like too far ahead of anything. Like, if you're going to punch me in my face, maybe I might brace a little bit, but I don't know if I want to walk around the street like this all the time, I don't know. I think that because that's going to change everything else if I go through life like that, right? Like if I go through life with my, flak vest and my AR-15 strapped on me, because I think it's just going to, fall apart and hit the fan any moment. Things might just fall apart and hit the fan.
Well, and Jesus doesn't say brace yourself. He says watch. He says be prepared. But he doesn't say brace yourself. There's something violent about bracing yourself, right? There's something defensive.
Oh, there's definitely something defensive. And I think,
but like defense against violence. When you brace yourself, you're defending against violence. And I think you're right. I know you're right. Even if somebody was going to punch me, the best thing to do would be to relax. Right?
Shift.
Or
I mean,
shift. Duck, right?
Bob and weed, man. Bob and weed. Or even moving with that force, taking a more of a judo approach. And I know the rhetoric sometimes of fear and gloom and doom. I'm just like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm just like right here, just trying to do my thing. And we can certainly, I think it's appropriate to pray for peace and pray for wisdom. And
yeah, absolutely. What do you think of this? What do you think of the stance that I've sort of been cultivating, the philosophy that the moment we start to believe we know what's going to happen, we become arrogant, and like you said, we start to brace ourselves. And I think you're right. Bracing ourselves is like the antithesis of what we want to do.
I think bracing, that's a hard thing. I think bracing ourselves in certain circumstances could be an appropriate response, right? I mean, like, maybe if I'm pushing against hard wind, brace. I mean, I think there's circumstances where bracing might be okay. But
it assumes that we know what's coming.
I think that where you said that's arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
That I would agree with. Nobody, not even Warren Buffett, really knows what's going to happen.
Because I mean, we constantly have to live under the illusion that we know what's going to happen, right? Like tomorrow, unless I believe, and maybe arrogantly, maybe a certain amount of confidence is important. Unless I believe I know what's going to happen tomorrow, like I can't just live like, I don't know. I have to have a certain amount of projection into the future. Mm-hmm. But I have to also remind myself that if I wrote down everything what I thought would happen, even if I just go half an hour by half an hour, I doubt it even 30%.
I think there's a big difference between knowledge and hope. Like, I know what's going to happen versus I hope what's going to happen.
I think that's extremely important.
Like I plant a garden in the hope that it's going to rain. I don't know it's going to rain. I hope it rains.
Or in the hope that I water it.
I remember to water it. And same thing like in any kind of business. Like you take certain steps in the hope that it's going to turn out. And hope, I think, that's not knowledge. In fact, there's a bit of humility there. It's like, I hope that these actions will bear fruit, but I also know that there are a lot of other factors outside of my control.
And I think that is evil. Embracing ourselves. Maybe we characterize that, sort of put a caveat here, embracing ourselves in way in advance. Embracing ourselves in a moment, I think, that's the sort of thing it's okay to embrace yourself in a moment. It's good because it's natural. Embrace yourself. But to embrace yourself as if you know what's going to happen. I think it's evil.
I'll say it's not very effective, right? I mean, it's like brace yourself for impact. Well, there's a moment between the warning and impact. But if you walked around life like this, you're not living. At that point, you're not living, right? You're preparing for some kind of. You're anticipating a catastrophe, and that's my big fear: is that people that embrace some of those types of fears in that kind of way, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and frankly, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to live here and now, which is the only moment you get anyways. So I'm not a big prophet of gloom and doom,
Yeah.
or any other.
Prophecy? You don't believe in prophecy?
Um, maybe forthtelling, yes. Foretelling, I don't know. I'm a little speculative on that. It just depends on, and frankly, given my own uh, uh, religious presuppositions, I also factor in the source.
The sources of prophecy. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But do you believe in prophecy ultimately, in general? Like, do you believe it prophecy in the setting of your church, of your?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as a spiritual gift, absolutely.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were like are Eastern Orthodox or Orthodox. You're not Eastern, right? Just Orthodox.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You can throw that. You can throw that. That word in there. Eastern, as far as like Eastern European, I suppose.
Okay. Well, are Orthodox? Are they? They're not secessionists, right?
No. Oh no.
Okay, good.
No.
I'm a little scared there. I like the old Orthodox.
No.
tradition.
I mean, they're no. As far as like the continuation of miracles and spiritual gifts. No. No. That's
It
that's so
continues.
that's so common. It's boring, in my opinion. Yeah, because if you start getting so excited about the sign that you miss the fact that it's a sign, then that's the different problem, right?
Interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's plenty of everyday miracles going on.
Yeah. And isn't that the crux of what we're talking about in terms of hope, in terms of not being in control? It's a miracle that tomorrow things go well, right?
I mean, yeah, they go pretty well. Even when it's pretty bad, they actually go. In some sense, they go well.
And I'm often so there, with some of my friends I work with, so, some of my friends um, of a different socioeconomic level, they'll often say, "I'm just glad," I'll say, we'll always start, "Hi, how you doing?" Or let's check in, if we're doing sessions or whatever. Let's check in with something good. What makes you happy?
Mm-hmm.
I got out of bed this morning. I'm happy, and
yeah,
it took me a while to to understand what that really meant. That because I have such pretense. There's so much pretense for me in my life that I have control over anything.
mm-hmm.
That a lot of what I have and what happens to me is because of what I did. I say as I'm sitting in the house that my grandfather built.
Right.
I it's I think it's a calling to me to be more humble all the time, and as I hope, I really appreciate you bringing up that aspect of it, as I hope that the modicum of hope, of humility that is in hope instead of control. I hope I don't control. I really like that.
Well, and I think it helps because it really starts to narrow in over what we do have control over. Right? I mean, like I have control basically over my behavior and not much else.
But see, even that, I don't know how much control I have over that. I wonder how much of that is pretense. In the sense, not that what I do is controlled by somebody else.
Sure.
But that there are so many different factors.
And even then, like even within the realm of behavior, and we'll get my camera here, it gets there's an aspect of it that is biologically based, right? That's driven. And then but there's some really important part.
There's something in there
That's tied in with our own motivations and our will and choice. And we often get so enamored with everything else, we forget like really what I should be focusing on is like this little slice of the pie that's really important. Because it is one of the few things I actually do have some choice in. Like I've got some influence. I've got some power here.
Influence. I think that's the difference between what we're talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
Control and influence. I wish I could control myself, and I think I can, but I have to influence myself to get to that point to control myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would love to lose 10 pounds. I tell myself to do it all the time, but I also tell myself not to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I have a great deal. There's no action I have more control of than mine. And I don't really think I have complete control of it. I don't believe I have complete control of it.
And I guess, maybe to put it in the context of, we were talking, about some politics and civil unrest and fear. And I guess, to bring this to me personally, I'm not sure how long it's been. Maybe it's been a couple years ago. Recognizing there's a difference between being angry and being aggressive. That I can be angry and choose not to be aggressive, right? So, or I can have thoughts of being unjustly treated, feeling angry, and not being aggressive. While the natural impulse is to be aggressive. And so when I think about it on a broader social scale, that's something that our culture is not quite adept at, right? I mean, we see something that, however you want to slice it, is deeply laden with thought, various beliefs and thoughts and emotions, and then people react, as opposed to like, well, maybe we can just hold those thoughts and beliefs for a moment and do something loving, or at least maybe ambivalent. We don't have to be an internet troll. We don't necessarily have to brandish a firearm. I don't know.
I agree. There is actions. There are actions. So you have said that a couple times during this time, as you said, we can control our actions.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is true. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some things that I think behavior wise are difficult, but
it's not complete control though over our actions, because some things we do things without thinking, right?
There are reflexes, right? So I mean, we do have some aspects of behavior that are reflexive, but generally speaking, like, I'll go through some fun experiential exercises to help disabuse people of the notion that they can control their thoughts, and disabuse people of the notion that they can control their emotions. And then I follow up with, now pick up your arm. That's really easy. It's harder to.
I like that. Yeah. This
right here will get you in trouble.
And
even the behavior like encompassed in our facial expression sometimes, but
a lot of what it could be is practice. We've practiced doing this a lot.
Oh, sure. And it's automatic and reflexive. Like I'm sure if I like quiz my kids, like, what will crush you faster? Some of the stuff that your father occasionally says that's, sort of mean, versus like the look that he gives you that he doesn't catch before he takes that really deep breath. And he's like, I understand why some creatures eat their young.
Well,
and I love you.
Well, but so that, to me, that puts the onus and importance on. So we talked about anger. You said be angry. That was one of the practices that I would take. I would do. I'd take my students through when we talked about self-determination, because anger is such a reflexive thing. I said, get angry. Can you get angry for me right now? And for a teenage boy, it's like, no. And I said, I can get angry right now. Why? Because I know what it feels like. And I've practiced. I think it's important to practice getting angry, even when you're not angry, because you start to feel, like you said, it becomes less of a reflection, a reflexive action, and more of a controlled, influenced reaction. And I think the more we practice getting angry or happy, both, the more we can understand in our own bodies, what is these? When I do this, when I make my eyes go like that. And I love what you're saying about, like, I can't control my thoughts as much, my emotions as much, but controlling my body actually influences those things.
It does. So, like, even when you're, and I'd have to work hard at it, I suppose, to flex my face in a way that, my eyebrows turn to V. That helps you feel angry, right? Like a half smile makes you feel better. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's a great example of behavior influencing mood and behavior influencing emotion. Now, obviously, you made a choice to do that. But on a broader cultural, political level, I think we lack that finesse. We lack sometimes that finesse to sit with just uncomfortable things without immediately taking some kind of action. And there's a time, and that's the hard thing. I guess I'm a big fan of flexibility. Like, there's a time to brace, there's a time to pick up stones, and there's a time to put them down. But we ought to be a little wise about
and the wisdom to know the difference.
And the wisdom to know the difference, right? So that's why I look at the future and I go, I don't know what it holds. I hope that we, ask for wisdom and walk in wisdom, and that people learn to tolerate and love one another, despite the fact that people hold differing views on things. And that those beliefs and ideas have, deep emotional attachments and value, and that we ought not to, like, touch other people without their permission or take their stuff, because that's just wrong. Just some basic rules.
We need some basic rules.
Some basic civil rules.
As well, we need to practice the things that are not so reflexive, or that are. No, we need to practice the things that are reflexive, so that we can learn to know that, this is what's happening right now.
Yeah, or just even build some awareness. Like, I know that when this happens, I tend to have this reflex where I want to lash back out, or I want to crumple into a ball and shut down, right? Where in it might be a circumstance where I need to be a little bit more assertive. It goes, it cuts both ways. It's not just simply, these externalized behaviors where it's like, it can also be things that are deeply internalized, where, it's like, oh no, I need to speak up. I need to do something for myself.
Yeah, and practice isn't always physical, right? We can practice and rehearse things in our brains, because I was thinking about lately how reflexively fearful and angry I've been when I can't believe that people I love or people that I care about have a completely different view than I do. It makes me fearful, right? It's like, I don't understand how you could believe this. And so awareness is pretty much practicing the reflexive, right? It's at least analyzing it in ourselves as we go through it, right? An awareness of, like, why am I feeling this way? Why I am feeling a certain kind of way right now.
Yeah, and building, and I think it's not a far stretch to go. Like when I feel this, I tend to do this, or
Mm.
think this, or respond to this particular emotion or feeling in a particular way. Um, and then you have the opportunity to make a choice to do something different. Like
Yeah.
I guess when I think of why I can't believe this person thinks this, and it's like, well, if I think about it hard enough, I can probably come up with a reasonable explanation for why
Yeah.
they believe that. I might not
Yeah.
agree with it, but I can follow the bouncing ball
Yeah.
back far enough to go, okay, well that I can understand how that makes sense for them right now at this place in their life.
Well, and even if I can't, the awareness that I'm afraid,
Hmm.
it's okay. It goes back to what you're saying. I think that was what triggered it in my mind is it's okay to sit in fear. It's okay to sit in disbelief. Like what? It's okay to sit in these things, take a deep breath, and just not do anything,
Yeah,
or be nice, but
it,
it's
yeah,
okay just to sit and think,
yeah.
okay,
That's
I'm
my
I'm
favorite.
afraid.
It's my favorite bit of like distress tolerance for couples advice.
Sit.
Well, we just need to talk about it. Probably
Mm.
not. Probably not. I don't think you're. That's not going to go well. Like, how about we just name what it is,
Yeah.
hold each other's hands, acknowledge that we're together, and just be together in some pain for a while.
That's good.
Because our attempts to fix it often make it worse.
Mm.
Right. Well, if I could just get them on the same page, well, good luck with that. You're going to experience some really interesting resistance there.
If I could just make them like me,
Yes. Yes. And,
that's my
and about
difficulty.
10 minutes into that conversation, when it gets historical, when it's like, well, you did this and you did that, and then the contempt comes out, and here we go.
Hysterical, historical, huh?
Yeah. I don't like it's more historical. It's never really hysterics, which honestly is a rather chauvinistic word, but I will show my feminist card on that one. I live in a house full of women, so they've
It's allowed.
they've been good to me, so I suppose I should turn the favor around. No, because it always does tend to get historical, right? It's not like, well, you're just over emotional. It's like, well, you did, or you remember when? Do you remember when you said? Yeah. Anymore, it's just kind of like, look, let's agree that we're in this together, and we're just gonna sit in this funky feeling for a while till it goes away, and we're gonna hold each other till it does. Because our attempts to sometimes use words too much creates more of a problem as opposed to, well, let's just name it.
Isn't that amazing?
It's good enough.
Okay, so that to me gets into the dark magic, the evil magic of social media.
Okay.
Because
the evil magic of social media.
The bad mojo of social media is that you can't just sit with somebody. You can't call upon being with somebody.
Oh, absolutely.
It's all historical.
Well, and it's disembodied.
Completely.
You can't touch anybody. You can't look them in the eye. You can't do anything that you would do in a face-to-face discussion that can downregulate what's going on, and make some mid-course corrections.
Yeah.
In microseconds, just using based our body, using our bodies and our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really. I mean, it's like text.
Oh yeah.
Tell people all the time, don't argue by text.
Do you remember ICQ? It was first year of Tacoma Falls College. I was dating my high school sweetheart, and ICQ was instant messenger, but it would show you the other person's text as they typed.
Oh,
so there was no. I mean, there was a back button, but what were you gonna say? You could back button, but you could see, and there were so many discussions that were just we didn't make it through the year.
So many hurt feelings that just didn't need to occur.
I came to your room a couple of times crying. Do you remember that? Was that?
That's
Was a lot
possible. It's been, we're getting old and my memory's getting foggy.
but I think
you.
To bring it back to the culture crisis we are experiencing now, I think it has a lot to do. Josh, you are completely right. Sometimes you just need to sit there with people that you love or that you're with, and
that you're with.
Just be there with them.
Yeah.
And accept who they are by looking at them, communicate love and acceptance by not going away and not flicking them off and not,
I mean, isn't that really the fear though of like when people aren't on the same page? Like that I'm outside the tribe, or I'm not in their tribe, or they're not in my tribe. And we miss the point that no, we're actually still in the tribe.
Yeah.
We really are. We're family, and or we're neighbors, and we've got to learn to tolerate the fact that there are some real differences between people, and work with that. I'm not sure that like the contempt and the criticism serves anybody. I mean, not to mention the fact it doesn't even get to the heart of the of a discussion or a conversation. You can't even get to the place where you can argue anything on the true merits of what people are talking about.
Right, and I've had some people try to. I mean, yesterday my my pastor even sort of took me to task, but in a way that was completely condescending, public, and trite. It wasn't like, hey, and another friend came along and did it more in a way that was like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying now. It's just saying that I'm a fool is not really going to help.
Well, and that's you can call me all kinds of things, but please don't call me a fool.
In so many words.
Yeah. Because I am a lot of things that are negative, but I hope I'm not, because when I hear, this is me just talking about myself.
Okay.
Like when I hear that word fool, I think of it in its like most pejorative biblical sense. And it's not a good word.
Yeah.
The fool has said in his heart that there is no God. And you're like, yeah, that guy, he got some problems. I can be greedy, I can be selfish, I can be a lover of pleasure, I can be all kinds of things, but don't call me that.
Interesting.
That's just me when it comes to words. But
well,
if I get to that place, I hope a brother would be like, you acting a fool. You're acting a fool.
Well, somebody who would call me out, but has never called me a fool is Grandma Darlin. She says Chanda sent me a site to watch. She's talking about the hydrochloroquine lady, from Nigeria.
Yeah.
And just a few minutes into it, it disappeared. That's creepy.
That is kind of creepy.
Yikes. Jamie Marie Von Stein says, hey, Judah McNeil. Hey. Say hi to Josh.
What's up, Jamie?
And Connie Allen says, hi, Judah. Hi, Connie.
Hi, Judah.
You need to get some of your we need to stream this on. So I mean, they're saying hi, Judah, because it's on my stream. How do we stream it on your stream?
I have no idea. That's some type of like technological voodoo that exceeds my magical powers. I'm not that level of a wizard, man.
Well, I've dabbled in the dark arts of social media. So I can tell you it's probably best to not do that.
I don't care.
Tainted my soul in ways.
There's nobody around here that really cares about what I say anyway.
I doubt it. I doubt that that's true. But does Letitia have a Latasha?
Yeah.
Does Latasha have a Facebook?
She does.
She use it.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'm friends with her. I don't know. I just remember that it used to be Joshua and Latasha.
It was, and then
She's like, I'm not messing with
yeah,
friends anymore.
I can't remember how we had a little divorce there, but it happened.
Say
And,
that.
and so I've got this strange menagerie of social media friends that actually I think it's fun because I've got friends like social media friends, like at least since we're on Facebook. I mean, on Facebook, I've got friends all over the place ideologically, and so it's just this fun petri dish of just crazy collection of ideas and sentiments, and I love it. As far as like, and I'm a bit of a voyeur. I don't ever really troll or throw myself in there. I'm just always collecting information and synthesizing, and it just provides me with a diversity that's I eat it up. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but enough to just try to take in some different perspectives.
Right. You've always been somebody who's appreciated more information rather than less. And say what you will about the tenets of social media, it is a place of information, good or bad.
It's got lots of I almost want to call it data, where I'm like, there's lots of data.
That's better, data. Someone once said the best pithy definition of social media, or Facebook actually, was an address book that updates itself.
An address book that updates itself.
It's,
yeah, I think it was just like lots of data points.
Yeah, data points.
Yeah. I try to take more of like a Sherlock Holmes, balance of probabilities. Get as many data points and just kind of see where it filters out.
Have you seen Sherlock, the series?
Of course.
Oh yeah.
My oldest daughter and I have probably watched through it a couple times.
A couple times.
Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I'm okay. You've convinced me. Me and my daughters are gonna watch that.
No,
how old was she when you first started watching it?
Yeah, it's probably 14, 15.
Okay.
We waited a while. I think we let her watch the first season maybe when she was 13, and as those seasons got darker and more macabre, and
not as I would say, the quality went down over this. Maybe not the cinematic quality, but the storytelling is
sure. Yeah, and they definitely, I think, to kind of counterbalance that, they added some
shock factor type stuff.
Yes, so exactly, some shock factor type elements in that could easily have been left out, and not have harmed the story if they had been doing a better job.
Yeah.
So I mean, we waited a little while until she was, to I guess sully her mind with that. Though she's got a pretty good filter.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Well, they're begging us to let them go to the next level. They have some friends that have been able to see Stranger Things and Sherlock.
Oh.
So we have not relented, but they're wearing us down. We want to be wise.
I think older teens, like, that's something you might be able to negotiate,
right?
Though I mean, some of those. Sherlock. I mean, there's some give and take on the later seasons. Stranger Things. I mean, other than the sci-fi kind of.
You'd be more likely to let Stranger Things go?
Yeah. I mean, other than like it's the 80s and people smoke and there's the occasional use of an expletive.
I think it's the last season, though, that concerns us the most.
Yeah.
Oh, and
it does get a little more gory. I tell you something that I was kind of more hopeful for, and I was a little bit nonplussed, was Cursed. Cursed. Because Netflix, they'll throw out some
There's a show called Cursed. Remind me what it's about. I don't know if I've seen
Well,
that.
it's recent, and
Okay.
I'm really bad about actors, but in general, it plays off of Arthurian legend, and
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
it is a, and I'm just going to say it, it is a blatant piece of anti-Christian propaganda
Oh.
in a sitcom, in a miniseries.
It sounds cursed.
It hit me, and I because my oldest daughter Iona, she was like, "Oh, I can't believe you started that without me," and I was like, "Well, let me just tell you, like, there are parts of the story that I think are redeemable, but there's an aspect of this whole storyline that's just like I'm watching it just because I want to see how they play this."
Mm.
And I think that particular show is a great example again of cultural divide. It pits this notion of a very violent, control focused, anti-diversity kind of sense of the church against this collection of people who have been oppressed. And I'm going to forget about I'll forget the particular name that these people are given, but they're the ones with all the magic and the diversity, and it is a blatant piece of historiographic propaganda. I just
Retelling of history.
well, see, that's the funny thing. Like they take myth and they spin it, but the motifs are glaring. They are glaring.
Yeah.
There's just no way around. It's almost like, so if like Chronicles of Narnia is a religious allegory, this is a secular allegory.
Yeah, that's interesting. Secular, not just secular. It sounds like you're saying it's
secular in the sense of like that's the desired outcome.
right. So it's not just out of time. It's a pagan. It's a pagan myth.
It's oh sure. I mean, like
pagan allegory.
Well, Arthurian legend is I mean, it's just part of our culture, and so it ties in with something that I think most people in the Western world are going to find some sympathy or attachment to, but they spin the story in such a way that the church immediately becomes the antagonist in the story, immediately becomes the villain, and in almost an irredeemable way. And it's like, there's not even nuance. When there's not even nuances in those characters, and it's just,
is that better or worse though? Because not having nuance can sometimes be so obvious that it's identifiable to younger generation.
Well, I think it is identifiable to a younger generation, and that's why I think it's worse, because they're not equipped with the knowledge that when you have that flat of a character, that should be an alarm bell. Like, well, that can't be right. Because that's not how real life is.
Yeah.
There's generally some mixture here. Like they're not that evil. Like there's some redeemable qualities here. They're not showing that. Yeah.
Well, that might be something to talk about. You and I are lovers of narrative and storytelling, and I think we should talk about storytelling. Maybe magic. I don't know. Oh my God. I gotta go. But
I hear you, brother.
Another good conversation, man. I really appreciate your wisdom and ability to elucidate certain concepts that I think that are outside of my purview. You know, they're outside of my peripheral vision, and you bring it into the light. And I like that. Thank you. In particular, the idea of hope and how hope is antithetical in somewhere. It's different. We'll say it's different. It's a different approach than
it's a
bracing
different
yourself.
approach.
Yeah, and it is different than control. Control, bracing ourselves. This is the language of fear and not an openness and humility to a hopeful life. So I appreciate that. And may we go forward in that this week.
So I'll be helpful and grateful.
Thank you, Grandma Darlin. Thank you, Jamie, for checking in. And Connie, come back. We want to see you. I'm used car salesman now. Come back. We want to see you.
Come on back. Watch the video.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
And like